and took a few steps back to celebrate the holiday and to do a few things with our children.
You know what
So,
happened?
what?
The mic was off when I started. Welcome, folks, to Candid Dialogues with Plumber and Lorraine. I'm Plumber, and this is Lorraine. I guess we got to start all over again, right? That was only about 30 seconds of the mic being off, so
All
we're
right.
good. We're good. We're good.
All right, guys, just want to let you know we had taken a quick break. I know it's been a minute since we've been on. We took a quick break just so that we could celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday and get our youngest daughter together with school and everything. So we are excited about this segment today. It is a really good one.
Yes, it is, and just we're going to put it out there as well. We are going to. This is going to be our final session for the year because we're going to break for Christmas. We do need a break. We want you all to celebrate Christmas. So this will be a final segment for the year, and we'll start again in the beginning of the new year. Just to set this up, what we're going to be showing you is an interview we did with Pastor Marcus Ellington on the theme "How to Handle Difficult People."
Yes.
Pastor, most of you know, Lorraine and I are pastors. We've been pastoring for quite a while. And our denomination, the district that we're in, the people that we have our covering with, the national the national next gen coordinator. It's quite a title, Pastor Marcus. Hey, anyway, so they contacted us and they wanted us to do a just a kind of like an interview training for the leaders that will be that are leading the youth in our denomination. So without much ado, I think we're going to step into that. Yes?
Yes.
We're just going to go ahead and roll the interview.
And then we'll meet you right back.
Yes. Stay on at the end. If you've got questions, listen, we love to hear from you guys. We do. Let's interact during the interview, yes, during the session, but also stay on for a live Q&A at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, all righty. So
See you
let's
in a bit.
see, just a second, let's see where we're going here.
Welcome to Candid Dialogues with Plumber and Lorraine Baylor. Each week, we'll bring you wholesome and engaging conversations about things that matter to you and things that matter to us. We address life topics ranging from relationships to business and our personal favorite, spiritual things. Now, here are your hosts, Plumber and Lorraine.
Well, I am so excited to be on this episode of Plugged In with two amazing pastors, leaders, Pastor Plumber and Lorraine Baylor. They are from Refiners International Ministries in Whitsett, North Carolina, and they are here with us to have an awesome and honest conversation. And I want to drop the title or the theme of this conversation because I think this is amazing. Today, we're going to talk about how to handle difficult people. Now, I want to just pause right there, right? Because that is
a good one. That's a good one.
That is a good one. And I'm really wanting to jump in. But before we do, Pastors Plumber and Lorraine, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Ooh. Well, I'm Plumber, of course, and this is Lorraine. And so we've been married. It'll be 20 years this month. And
I'm a native of Barbados. He's a native of Africa, Sierra Leone, Africa.
Sierra Leone, yeah. And we've been doing ministry for that long. We started doing ministry together while we were still engaged, but been pastoring together for a while. Very passionate about mission work, very passionate about coaching, developing people. I think that is something that we can say is a passion of ours. We have pastored together in Maryland, in Michigan, and now in North Carolina. And what else? We're church planters. We've planted churches here in the U.S. and in Sierra Leone. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
We just love people. That's it. That's us.
Help us out here, Marcus. Where else can we go with this? I mean, I can talk about us all day long, but
no, you just told me a great story. You told me a little bit about how you guys met. I think that our next gen leaders will be blessed by this story. Can you share some of that with us?
Okay, but go ahead, honey. See?
A little bit of how we met.
Yeah.
Okay, so we both work for the same company, and both our companies were going to be merging. Prior to actually merging, he was working with some people that actually had worked with me, and this is where he takes over the story.
Okay, so yeah, so I was having lunch with some about 3 guys that had worked with her. So again, same company, 2 different locations. Our offices were going to merge. And so I'm having lunch with these guys. This is 7 months before we merged. And, you know, we're just having a guy conversation, and I'm talking about my ideal wife. I had a list, y'all. I had a list, a 10-point list. And I'm going down this list, and the guys just looked at each other and they started smiling like, okay, so Plummer, that office we're going to merge to, that person you just described, she's there, because they knew Lorraine. I had never met her before. And as a matter of fact, that same week, 3 different times I was told that. One by a bunch of these guys, another by an elderly lady who had been trying to hook me up. She worked for the company, and she'd been trying to hook me up, and it just hit her. It's like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so 3 times that week. So 7 months later, fast forward 7 months later, our offices merged, and 15 minutes into me being in that building, I saw her at the copier, and I went over and I introduced myself to her, and that was it. 3 months later, I said, baby, marry me. 7 months later, it'll be 20 years this month.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, congratulations.
And you know, we've been, oh, sorry about that.
No,
we've been
good.
bivocational pastors, so we both have secular jobs that we're part of. So we kind of intermingle both of them.
Yeah. And the truth is, you know, the first 2 years of our marriage, we were both difficult people to each other. I kid you not, man. I mean, because, you know, we different backgrounds, different life experiences. Different life experiences. But I tell you what, it was just a dogged belief that God had brought us together, that has kept us. That was it. That's all we had. That's what we kept going back to. We're believers.
Yes.
And we've got to figure out a way to work this out. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, that encourages me, because our first couple of years of marriage, Star and I have been married 15 years in January.
Okay.
Our first couple of years, man, it's like, what was going on back then?
So you know the story.
Right?
Yeah.
God is so good, though. Well, listen, I am so grateful that you guys are on today, and I love that story. I can't wait to tell Star, actually, that story. That's an amazing story. But I want to jump right into this, because the topic of dealing with difficult people, I mean, honestly, all of us, no matter what field we're in, whether you're in pastoral ministry, whether you're in secular work, as we would call it, nevertheless, we are always going to be dealing with people in some way or another we would call difficult people. Or let's be honest, sometimes we may be that difficult person and not even recognize.
Now we talking.
So before we do dive into this, though, I want to kind of set the stage. Well, I actually want you to do that. What would you, or how would you define a difficult person?
So, you know, I think that's a very tricky question, because, you know, it's easy when you hear the word difficult person, it's easy to go for the extreme, right? Words of like, well, you know, maybe you're thinking about people that have an abrasive character, or they're rude, they're loud, they're aggressive, they're uncaring. It's easy to picture that. And the list can go on and on. But the question, you know, Lorraine and I were talking about it, and it's like, okay, well, what about, so that's fine, that's easily identifiable. But what about that other person who is a sweet person, but maybe, let's say in the work environment, they have a habit of borrowing your stapler, but don't return it. Or when they do, they don't put it exactly where they took it from.
Or if you're somebody that is in a position like myself, who coach people, who have a team of people that coach people, you bring them in, you coach them, and ask them if they understand. They say they understand. 3 weeks down the road, you have to bring them back in for the same thing, and come to find out that, you know, what you talked about, or what they said they understood, it's possible that they really didn't understand.
And they told you they understood, right?
Told you they understood.
So you begin to get the picture here that it's a two-sided equation. It really is a two-sided equation. Perception matters, because what might be difficult for me based on me, my personality, my worldview, might not be difficult for the other person.
Exactly.
So I think dealing with difficult people, really handling difficult people, it starts with us understanding that people are different, and it's a two-sided equation. Conflicts will arise. You deal with difficult people all the time, and it boils down to how we perceive one another. And really, this is where emotional intelligence comes in. So yeah. I don't know if that kind of answered it. Basically, to say there's no one stereotypical difficult person. Keep in mind, it's a two-sided equation. So this is where emotional intelligence comes in. Yeah.
So you saying that, I think, made it even more difficult, because the truth is, as you mentioned, there is no one stereotype. You can't just slap a label on this type of person and say they're all difficult people. I guess it really does depend, as you mentioned. Perspective really has to weigh in here when you look at. I love how you mentioned worldview, your upbringing, all of these things that really determine. But ultimately, when I was listening to what you're saying, it seems like, honestly, when it comes down to it, it really just depends on the type of person you are and the type of person they are, and ultimately conflict management. How do you manage conflict wherever you are in life? So let me ask you this. You brought up the term, you said it's two-sided. So if it's two-sided, I would ask you this question. Do you really believe people can change?
Well, I do believe people can change.
The
But
question is, can you change
can you
them?
change people? And that's where the difficulty, because if my approach to you, Marcus, let's say you and I work right in the district, and if for whatever reason I perceive that Marcus is difficult, he doesn't respond to emails. Let's say I'm the type of person is when I receive an email, I have a system. Every day at between 9 and 9:30, I respond to emails, even if it's just to say, hey, listen, I got your email, give me some time to process it. Good. That's my expectation. But let's say whenever I'm expecting an email from you, or when I send you an email, it takes 5 days before you respond, right? In my mind, you're difficult. You're being difficult. You may have no clue, right, that this is difficult for me. And so how do I see you as being difficult. Am I going to be able to change you? I can talk to you all day long in all kinds of ways. I may never be able to change you because that's your system. That's what works for you. And so again, brings me back to the role of emotional intelligence, which really is, it depends on how emotionally intelligent I am. And that plays a big role in handling difficult people.
And I think that Marcus mentioned one word that is very important, that labeling. When you label someone as difficult, how you perceive them is going to be how you react to them, bringing back in that emotional intelligence. So it's how are you going to handle someone that you could perceive to be difficult? Take that label off of them, because if you've already slapped a label that this person is difficult, then your reaction, your response, your interaction from them is going to be from a defensive standpoint. So in approaching them to get something accomplished, it's going to be even more difficult because you've already placed the label and you have determined how you're going to interact with that person based on your perception.
So good. So good. So you guys brought up a few buzzwords, but I want to hit on one again. You mentioned emotional intelligence multiple times. Now, this is obviously a hot topic all around right now. People are more and more talking about this term, emotional intelligence. Here's the thing, though. I feel like it's like finances. Everyone's kind of at a different level when you think about emotional intelligence. So let's say, Pastor Plummer, you mentioned the email example. And I'm trying to think, when you said, I'm like, when's the last time I emailed him? Did I get back with the let me think. But as I'm thinking through this, you said it perfectly. So many people have different systems.
Yes.
One, it may be, hey, I don't like this. You're being difficult because it took 5 days. But to the other person, they may be feeling like, phew, I did it within 5 days. That was within my window. So
Yeah.
how does the emotional intelligence piece work? Recognizing that both people may be at two totally different levels in their own emotional intelligence, and how do we integrate those in a way that brings that unity we need?
Well, I think it comes really first understanding what emotional intelligence is, right? There are four components that I teach when I do my coaching. Even when I'm a certified coach, a professional coach. I life coach, and I'm an executive coach. So there are four components we talk about. The first component is self-awareness. Being aware of my emotions and how it affects other people. So self-awareness is one. The second component is self-regulation. So we're talking about self-discipline and emotional control, being able to regulate myself. And that really, I think for me, is the key component, because all of this, handling difficult people, boils down to our response.
Yes.
So self-awareness, number one, self-regulation, number two. And then the third thing is social awareness, being aware of other people's emotions and how we interact and how it affects us. And the fourth component is how we put it all together. So emotional intelligence really encompasses all of that. And it plays a big role, because if I'm going to deal with difficult people, I've got to be self-aware. I've got to be aware that I might be a trigger for them.
That's right.
Because I might be the only person in an office full of 20 people that this one individual perceives as being difficult.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
It really does.
Yeah, so I might be the trigger. So if I'm not self-aware, one of the things I like to say is, we cannot, even as people, but I really, because most of the time I deal with leaders, I say, as a leader, you cannot afford to be on autopilot.
That's right.
You've got to have situational awareness. You got to be aware of people's body language, how they smile, how they respond, how they, all of that stuff speaks. We say much more. A lot more can be said in what is not said than in what is said.
That's
a mouthful, but
yeah, and they have to know that you care about them. They have to know that you have their best interests at heart. If they don't know that from the very beginning, that's what you suppose as a difficult person could become a little bit more difficult, because they see your reaction to them and how you're more interested in the process than the person.
And it really goes back to the question you asked earlier. Can we change people? We really can't.
But we can change ourselves. We can adjust ourselves.
That's it. So if we go back to the fact that handling difficult people is a two-sided equation, there's that person on one side, there's me on the one side. Oftentimes, our focus is on changing that other person. We're shooting for 100%. Well, if you shoot for 100%, you're going to get zero, because you may not change that person.
That's right.
However, if I focus on me, how I respond, my responses, I'm at 50% already.
It's good.
I'll take that over 0%.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So now this is good. I should be taking notes here. Thank God this is recorded. I can watch this again. So when you think about the context we're talking about leaders here, obviously, who are leading ministries or at work or at home or wherever they interact with people. So the key, if I'm hearing this correctly, is not to look to change the other person, but to start with yourself.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So if that being the case, what are some steps you would say are important for leaders to help on this journey of emotional intelligence and better understanding themselves?
Well, let me offer, again, my background is construction engineering and physics. So I love
equations.
Yeah. So I think in those terms. So let me offer an equation, right? 3 simple letters, E plus R equals O. So the E stands for the event, the R stands for your response, and then the O stands for the outcome. So the event plus your response equals the outcome. E plus R equals O. in that equation, in that simple equation, two things can change. Okay. Even as I say, tell me what two things can change in that equation, Marcus.
Yeah, my mind immediately goes to my response and then the outcome.
There you go. That's it. So the event is the event. That's that difficult person. You can't change them. If I want the outcome to change, to have any kind of change, because it's the outcome that's important, right?
Yes.
It's the outcome that's important. So I have to focus on my response.
And you have about 6 points also that you kind of throw in there that you.
Well, yeah. So that's the question he asked, right?
Yeah, let's get that.
I'm a talker. I'm a coach. I teach 6-hour-long seminars every day. So
let's keep it moving. I love to mess with them.
Okay. So first, again, because the event plus your response equals the outcome. So first, the first thing I'll say is focus on a preferred future. Focus on the outcome. Okay. That's what I'm looking for. Stephen Covey has a book out, very popular book. You guys might be familiar with it. I highly recommend it. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yes.
One of the habits he says is begin with the end in mind. That's the same thing. Focus on the outcome. So I'm dealing with Marcus. If I have perceived Marcus as difficult, all of my interactions with him, I'm going to focus on the outcome. What do I want? What do I want for us to be in harmony in this office, in this one interaction with him? So you take it step by step, right? So focus on the outcome, begin with the end in mind. Something else I would say, I think, Pastor Reno already said that. The second thing is avoid putting labels on people. Because the minute you put the label on them,
it's going to determine your response, or it's going to affect your response to that person.
Let me give another example. Let's say I label, Marcus as someone who talks too much.
You are on Marcus today.
Well, hey, we're having a conversation. So, well, let's say I label him, in my mind, I've labeled him as he talks too much. He doesn't even know when to stop. He comes in, I'm busy. Plumber, you got a minute? I say, Marcus, I really got a minute, only a minute. He says, oh, I'm going to make it quick. 5 minutes later, he hasn't even hit the point, right? So let's say I label him as a person who does not know how to get to the point. Doesn't matter what. Let's say I'm his lead, I'm his supervisor. The minute Marcus walks in through that door, when I look at him, what's going to go through my mind?
Oh, Lord.
Oh, gosh, here he comes. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So avoid putting labels on people.
Yes.
Good.
The third thing I'll say is take responsibility for your part in the equation. You've got to own it. Again, a difficult person situation, it's a two-sided situation. It's always two-sided.
And you're going to have to exercise some patience. Really, and I know I at one point struggled with that. I'm to a kind of person that, okay, let's just keep it moving kind of theory sometimes. And I had to kind of allow myself to recalibrate how I process, just this whole concept of patience with someone that I consider to be difficult.
Yeah, and really, the Bible talks about patience is it's really one of those virtues that are necessary for us as believers. Because hey, we're talking to Christian believers. It's one of those things. The Bible says you've got to mix your faith with patience. I think it's in Hebrews 6:12. It says some have inherited the promises that way. So you can have faith all day long that this relationship is going to change, but you've also got to mix patience with it.
That's really good.
Yeah. So what is it? Focus on the preferred future. Avoid putting labels on people. Take responsibility for your part in the equation. And then another thing I'll say is accept the other person's point of view. Validate.
That could be difficult.
Validate their experience. Yeah. Because the minute someone begins to feel like you trivialize them,
That's
or you don't think what they're saying is important, you become difficult to them.
Yeah, and it's that selfless acts of service towards them in the sense that you're putting yourself out there, say you before me.
And I think that'll be Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 talks about do nothing out of selfish ambition.
Yeah.
So in all things you got to see, I think it's verse 3. I know it's in chapter 2, just before it talks about, anyway, yeah. So there's that. And I'll give you one more. Focus on the behavior, not the person.
Yes.
You're not the person.
Because if you focus on the person, then it becomes subjective. It becomes personal. Your interactions with them, the things you'll say to them. So you will use, if it's the person, you'll say you this, you this, you this. And the minute you start hearing you this, what happens? The defenses go up.
And I like what you tend to do. He has an incredible amount of patience, more so than me in variety of different circumstances. And I've often asked you, why you just continue to deal with that person? But what he's taught me is that it's important to have people that are different from you. It's important to have people that don't think exactly like you think. It gives you an opportunity to grow if you're willing.
Mm.
It will give you that opportunity. So just from observing him and how he's interacted with individuals that I know have constantly rub him the wrong way, and he just come back with that big arm of love. But again, it goes back to the fact that when you care about people, dealing with the part that you consider to be difficult becomes a whole lot easier.
The lenses we put on matter, Marcus. I think if we can sum it up, the lenses we put on matter, and notice the lenses we put on. So we have something to do with it. In that difficult, it's an equation. It's two-sided. I think for me, that's been the biggest thing. I just own my side of it, and I make the adjustments. I'll share one more thing if we have some time.
Please do.
There's a guy, gosh, I forget his name. His name is Dr. Tony Alexander. He has a resource out called New Relationship Strategies. And he gives the example of how, we all know the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Hey, it's biblical. Jesus talks about that, right? But he says the golden rule is great. And we all know it's great. It's good for values. It's good for ethics. It's good for loyalty. It's good for consideration and all of that. He says, but sometimes the golden rule falls short. And he gives an example. He came up with what he called the platinum rule.
The platinum rule.
So the golden rule says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The platinum rule says, do unto others as they would have you do unto them.
Oh.
Which means I've got to consider that difficult person. I'm only difficult in their eyes because I'm not meeting their need. See, it has to do with meeting needs.
Yeah.
Conflict involves needs, it involves perceptions, it involves power, it involves values, it involves feelings of emotion, and they arise when those needs are ignored.
Wow.
Not once, when the needs are ignored. Whenever my needs are ignored by someone, I perceive them as being difficult.
That's right.
Yeah. So the platinum rule, do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Learn them, figure out what floats their boat, what gets their goat, and avoid it.
Oh my goodness, Pastors Plummer and Lorraine, this is golden, or should I say this is platinum? This whole thing. I tell you,
I love it.
Leaders,
I love it.
They're gonna love what you've shared. So let me ask you this as we close this up. How can our leaders connect with you? Because I know many of them are going to want to reach out and have further conversation around this. How could they connect with you?
Well, several ways if they want to connect. So we offer coaching. We offer relationship coaching. The easiest way if they want to reach to us directly is to send us an email, info@candiddialogues.com, candiddialogues.com, info@candiddialogues.com. They can get us directly, but we do have a YouTube channel called Candid Dialogues. And then we also have a Facebook page called Candid Dialogues. But the easiest way they can reach out, they can check out. So we do, Lorraine, again, we're both bivocational, but in this aspect of the work that we do, You can go to my website as well, plumberbaylor.com, to see. So we do corporate work, we do personal work. So
That is so great. I'm going to make sure that when we post this, that we also have that contact information there so that our leaders can freely reach out. I just want to say again, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Even from this time of us just sitting together, I got things that I'm like, okay, I got to start doing that better or doing this better.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm looking forward myself to applying what I've heard, but I'm also very excited about the opportunity for our leaders to jump into this and to hear and to grow. Thank you again so much for your time and pouring into our next gen leaders. We appreciate you. God bless you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're honored.
All right. I don't know why we keep doing that, and we were on a roll too.
Apologize about that, guys.
Gigi, listen, you need to just call. Thank you very much. You catch this thing all the time, and you need to just call. Pray for us. We need an assistant. You see the need for an assistant, right?
The mic.
I'm the production guy. I do everything, and it's just so.
So let's go back really quickly. Did any of you hear the question that he asked?
No, they didn't, because it was muted.
Okay, so answer that question again.
Okay, so the question I asked was pretty much, what's your takeaway from all of this, from dealing with difficult people? What is your takeaway? What would you say is the thing that that rounded it up for you?
They still can't hear.
They still can't
So
hear
that means something
us.
is wrong.
Well, no, they're behind in the time. They can hear us now.
Okay.
I'll unmute.
If you can hear, put a little thumbs up.
Yeah, give us a thumbs up if you can hear.
If you can hear us.
Give us a thumbs up if you can hear now.
How about you, Florence? Can you hear us now, Florence?
Yeah, they should be able to hear us now.
Fumi, can you hear us?
They're behind in time delay, honey.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Mandy says she can hear us.
Okay, so they can hear us.
Good.
All right.
Yeah, there's a time delay because of
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
So the question is, what is your? I thought it was a great interview. What is your takeaway from that whole thing? Because we did say a lot. What's your takeaway? What is that thing that you may have been doing it, but what is it that keeps you even as you deal with difficult people? What is it?
Well, I believe as far as, well, part of the one, let's go back because I had like 3 thoughts all in one trying to do one sentence. So let me slow it down for a minute. But the part about owning my portion, you know, of that equation, my reaction determines that outcome. That's the one thing that I can change.
Your response.
My response.
Good.
Sorry about that. My response. That's why I got you here.
Okay.
My response really will determine that outcome. The other thing that I really thought was, you know, impactful is the portion about the emotional intelligence in the sense of being self-aware. I need to be aware of myself in that equation.
Of your
You know,
emotions
of
and
my
how it
emotions
affects other people.
And how it affects other people. Yes, so that's one of my big takeaways. So how about somebody else here? I think we're on a really big delay because normally they're right in there with us.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, yeah. You see the thumbs
So
up.
any questions that you guys have, maybe that we didn't answer or address in that, or even comments? Because I know, I believe my sister, she's one of those culprit ones. She can tell us a little bit about dealing with difficult people.
You know, I while we're waiting for folks to respond, to respond, I want to piggyback off of that. What I was saying is the response portion of it really does matter.
It does.
One of the things, and I think we touched on this in I think when we did the episode on de-escalating arguments, right? Respond, don't react.
Don't react.
Because if you react, you have been sucked into that fight or flight state.
Exactly.
And once you're in a fight or flight state, you're dealing with a physiological response that it's very hard to control.
Yes.
So the response really matters, and keeping in mind in front of you always what you want the outcome to be. You'll hear people say things like bite your tongue, take a deep breath, count to 10. You won't do any of those if you don't have the outcome in mind.
That's right.
It's the
That's
outcome that I think of, say, I know if I go here, we're done, right? So, and the other thing you said is just owning your side of it, being aware, that's self-awareness. Now, there's there's all kinds of things I would really like for us to talk about when we start again in the new year.
In the new year.
Because personalities matter. Different personalities matter. There's one, and most of the models I know started way back with the DISC personality assessment. But there's a very simple model that I have found. One of the things that I teach is where it talks about 4 different types of personalities. So first of all, you got to know yours.
Yes.
You got to know what your personality is. So for example, you've got the personality of the guy who's a get it right kind of guy. And the whole idea behind that
You know
thing.
anybody like that?
Well, hold on. The whole Gracelyn always trying to drag me into things. That's what a big sister does, Gracelyn. So
That's right.
The whole idea behind this is that our behaviors are driven by what we intend to accomplish.
Yes.
We're talking about personalities now. So you've got the guy he wants to get things right. So obviously all his behaviors are driven by wanting to get things right, his or her behaviors, right? So that's the person who will measure 2 times. They'll measure 3 times before they cut once. They're very measured in how they do things.
And it could, for some people that are need a faster process.
Well, hold on. We're coming to that guy, right? Okay. So let me set the stage, right? So you got 4 different stages. So you got this guy who wants to get things right. That's their MO. That's what drives their behavior. They're slow. They're measured. You don't want to rush them. That's the kind of person where if you ask them a question and they don't have the right answer and they give you an answer that they're not sure of, they're not satisfied. They'll go do research. 2 hours later, they'll come back. They say, you know what? And you've moved on, right? But they say, you know what? This is because they've done research. That's what drives their behavior. Then you get the guy who's like, I call this guy the Nike guy. Let's just do it, right? That's the guy who just wants it. Let's get it done. Let's keep it moving. Do you know someone like that? Okay. She's a Nike guy. Okay. Right. So it's like, let's keep it moving.
Let's get it done.
Right. So this guy said, the Nike person and this person. So what drives that Nike person is what? Getting it done.
That's right.
So they don't care. And sometimes if they're not emotionally developed, emotionally intelligent, they leave a pound of flesh behind. They hurt people. Yeah. They hurt, they hurt people. So you would imagine the Nike guy and this other person who is a get it right person, they will butt heads all the time. The Nike guy thinking this guy who wants to get it right is a difficult person because they're slow, they're measured. The guy who wants to get it right thinks the Nike guy is difficult because he doesn't care. Yeah. Now those two people sit on a if you could imagine a plane, right? Like a level plane. On the top side, you have people who are task-oriented.
Grayson said Nike is in the blood. You're right about that.
On the top side, you have people who are task-oriented. So both the Nike guy and the get it right person, they are task-oriented. They're driven by the task. Below that line, you have people-oriented people. These are the touchy-feely people. The people who want to consider. So, for example, so you've got the Nike guy, and then you've got the one who wants to get it right. They are task oriented. Below that line, you got the person who is, and you got 2 different people. On the left hand side, you might have that one guy who is the I call him the Rodney King guy. Remember Rodney King made that statement? Can't we all just get along, right? So a guy like that, for them, building consensus before they make decision is a big deal. Yeah. Because it's all about people. Yes. They want to get everyone on board, right? So a guy like that also may be slow in making decisions because they don't want to offend anyone. They know what's right, but they don't want to say it. And so you could imagine a guy like that, because they're slow, they'll get on the other person, the Nike guy, they'll get on their nerves. It's like, listen, let's just make this decision. So there's all kinds of things. Again, I don't want to spend time going to all of that. I think we need a whole session on that, dealing with different personalities and that kind of stuff. And I think
we can come back to that in the new year. But Gigi said maybe a good tool is to cover one's buttons so we don't allow them to be pushed. Maybe it is. I'll let you address that one.
Well, that's a good one. The question, though, is as you cover your buttons, sometimes now we're looking at a spectrum of passive, and I think we've talked about this, passive on the far end, assertive on the middle, and aggressive on the other extreme. Sometimes people who are prone to cover my buttons so that they don't get pushed,
they're going to explode eventually.
We can end up being on the passive side. So even when you cover your buttons so that they don't get pushed, you might have that other person who is looking at you. They know you're covering your buttons. They know something is getting on your nerves. They know something is bothering you, but you're not saying anything. Guess what? You're being difficult to them. So I agree with you. Yes, we need to protect our buttons, but the key, I think, also, in addition to that, Gigi, is to know what your triggers are. You know, so it goes back to that whole emotional intelligence thing, knowing me. I gotta know me, and I gotta know other people.
Yeah, you have to understand the dynamics of that other person.
Different personalities.
Different personalities, because the way you approach that person is going to determine what you can get out of them. Because you have to approach them in a way that they're going to understand and they're going to be receptive. And there's so much that we can say on that, but let's go to Graceland.
She says, the platinum rule is paramount in dealing with others. You have to have situational awareness as well. I like that. Knowing the environmental pressure that person may be under.
That's right.
That's emotional intelligence, thinking about that other person.
Yes.
Seek first to understand
rather than be
then to be understood. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, but I really think when it comes to dealing with difficult people, there's so many different components. We've got to think of personality. We got to think of the emotional intelligence component, which for me, the big one is self-regulation, right? And
there's so many different facets of this, and the reason I say that is because depending on the environment that you're in will determine what actions you do have to take. Because sometimes if we're in a work environment and that so-called difficult person is disruptive to the entire team, there has to be a measure of reevaluating. And that's a whole different approach.
Well, I mean, this whole interview was really designed for leaders, but again, we all lead in our own in our own ways. As you were talking about that, I had this picture. Have you ever heard the saying, when you come to work, you leave your issues at the door?
Oh yeah, but who
does it work?
Who does that?
No, it doesn't. It does not work. These are my issues, right? We grew up together. We left Sierra Leone together 32 years ago. We're still hanging out. Now you expect me to come to work and say, "Here are issues. I'm gonna. Why don't you stay right here by the door? I'm gonna go in there with these nice folks for 4 hours. We'll pick up again at noon." It does not work. So we have to be aware of that. People do have issues. You can't just tell them.
They have concerns.
Yes, you can't just tell them, leave your issues at the door. No. How we approach those, right? Because now you're seeing them with their issues. Basically, their issues make them difficult for you. But if you don't try to understand where they're coming from, you now are difficult to them. You're that difficult person.
Yes, and sometimes you have to open up that conversation. I'll give an example for myself. I had to have a conversation with someone. And in that conversation, after the conversation, I said, do you have, what is your take on it? And they were like, well, I have a lot to say, but I can't say it right now. I said, no, come on, let's talk. And then there was a floodgate of personal issues that they went into. And it was like, okay, it helps me to understand when when you leave that open-ended question so that they can respond. Knowing and understanding that, of course, in dealing with that person, yes, the X, Y, and Z has to be completed, but it's not.
The work has to be done.
It has to be done, but it's not going to be completed if you have a broken system. If you have if you have someone that is really not capable of meeting that requirement based on the issues they're dealing with, and you might have to just deal with that first.
Yeah, and you know what? Since again, the interview itself that we showed you guys was for leaders, and so I'm going to speak. Yeah, well, I'm going to speak from that perspective. Yes. One of the things I will say, if you have someone who's reporting to you and their issues, personal issues, if you work in a company with an HR department, go there. That's not your job. HR is equipped to handle that kind of stuff. I'm not saying pawn it off, but I'm saying show some understanding, but know that there are
resources within the company.
There are resources within the company, and you could be treading
outside of the company.
You could be treading very quickly on legal matters. What you say, how you say it. So get HR involved. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Sounds like a plan. All right, guys. We appreciate y'all joining us.
Thank you.
Some of them
Yeah.
have been quiet today. You guys are usually very talkative.
That's all right.
I know this
I
is
think
our first session since the holiday,
Yes.
since Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Hope your Thanksgiving was really awesome.
Yeah. And we're going to be gone. We won't be back till the new year.
The new year.
Yes, we want to give you guys time to enjoy the season. We want to enjoy the season. Right?
Yes.
Let's not just
We'll
put it
still
all
be
on the-
recording. It just won't be online for you all until January.
Yeah, that's right. So, all right. Hey, we love you guys. Share this. I know someone will be blessed by this. Share it with someone, and we'll see you
In January.
before the well. Candid Dialogues. We'll see you in January, but
Yeah, but we'll be popping on here to say hey and so forth.
yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining. The Facebook page, Candid Dialogues, website.
Yes, and the website is actually up and running right now. So candiddialogues.com. If you go there, and we're gonna be
Don't
trying
forget
to
to subscribe to YouTube.
and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're actually we're working on a course that folks can invest in themselves. That will be helpful. So, alrighty, we'll see you guys in the new year. Let me see, how do I do this? There we go.